I have one question. This is Stanley Moses. I have the question for the whole panel. How difficult or easy was it to justify the benefits of analytics in your plant or grain plant?
It was actually our business people that came to us. They requested from the IT department these dashboards. They wanted to improve their filling efficiencies, and that's where we began. So they were very engaged with us right from the start. There was a number of initiatives at that particular factory, and as Dan and I got involved with it, we brought our standard kind of approach, which is we're building it for you and your site, but we plan on rolling it out to all the other ones also. So that was kind of the approach that we had. And as we saw success at the first site, it was easy to justify the expansion.
You want to answer that? Mention it, Doug, or not? It's up to you.
That's one of those questions where the answer is it depends, right? So a number of the projects that we've put in, we're very hard-nosed about that. We have very hard-nosed managers about show me the credits, and there always have to be hard credits for these kinds of things. But in a number of the projects that I either talked about or showed up here, the management that's been involved in that, what they've seen is that we've been able to, after the case is made for the initial deployment or the initial installation, kind of curious what you guys have to say about this too. We always see opportunities to capture more credits than we ever could have thought about when we originally justified the project. And we've seen a number of projects go that way lately. I wouldn't say that we've built that in a structured way, but we're kind of receptive to that kind of discussion. So yeah, the initial sale is tough, but there's an expectation that you find additional benefits later on.
You mean like the unexpected wins? Yeah, we run into that. I mean, we build programs, and we're kind of shocked how people use them sometimes, even though we had a design and an intent, For instance, one of our maintenance guys looked at the line that Dan showed you there with when the line was in use, and what he was looking for when he got in the morning was if there was a long period of downtime or it looks like a little comb. If it looked like a comb, he knew he had to go out there and make an adjustment to the line. As opposed to a long downtime, he expected to have a maintenance work order and somebody working on it at that time. In either case, it told him something about what was going on in his factory as soon as he walked in the door. We didn't even build it for maintenance. So that's one of those unintended wins of just getting visibility of what's happening in my factory to people throughout the factory can help you be successful.
Go ahead.
I'd like to point out we see a lot of our customers, at least, they like to just start small. Really, if it's coming from the plant floor up, especially where it's not a top-down approach, it's harder to make that sell, right? To get that approved. And if you can think really small and kind of get in the door and do something like Sherwin was doing with something really simple as a count, and being able to just provide analytics on the count, something that a dashboard you can get in front of users. If you can get that dashboard in front of that user, or in front of your manager or your CEO on their desktop without having to have anything specialized, then that's something they're going to sell off on pretty quick.
You have a question? Oh, go right ahead.
This question is really for, I guess, anybody in the group here. All of you talked about a top-down approach. From a dashboard perspective, what are we going to do with the data? How are we going to analyze it? But when you look at the factory floor, there is a complex structure there. You have different network protocols. You have, that don't necessarily talk to each other. And nobody really addressed that. How difficult was it in a factory environment? You might have, let's say, 6 different protocols. So did you install an OPC server, or did you have a gateway to bring them all together? I mean, and are there any gotchas or anything that we can learn from that?
Sure. I mean, that's a good point. What we would typically do with dissimilar control systems would be to introduce a data concentrator concept, a PLC, and then bring in the sensory devices into that PLC, which we know we can read. That's one way around that situation. Other times, there's a number of different drivers that the ignition, Inductive Automation's product Ignition provides a number of different drivers to allow us to communicate to a whole host of different types of devices right out of the box. You can ask for a specialty driver if there's a particular set of equipment that is repeated, throughout your factory that you want built for you specifically. But there's a number of different ways to approach that. And I would say the easiest thing that we did was put in the data concentrator and use Ethernet I/O. Now we just got to pipe the data over to that data concentrator, read it, and we haven't interfered with anything that's running on the factory floor today. And we don't get in trouble with any engineers or anybody else and stepping on their toes.
And also, just to extend what Ted said a little bit, we found it makes our life easiest and is the most sane approach is really any of the customization we encounter. Either push it up as high as you can into the database or as close to the control system as you can. So on the process side, like Ted said, we may have a data concentrator out there. But if we have dissimilar business systems, then we want to push that abstraction very high into the database, just so basically we're defining our own information space for what we want to see. And then just at the very top level, we have our ETL type jobs. So basically we want to push it as far as we can to either direction, because then the center, the actual engine where we're performing our calculations and deriving our metrics is standard, and we're not getting bogged down with some of the customization details.
Question back there?
Yeah, really quick, just curious on trying to understand, did you guys build this? Is this a homegrown system, or are you guys leveraging off-the-shelf products?
We're a custom shop, my team. So often I've seen us buy off-the-shelf software and customize it so much it's morphed into something that's almost, unsupportable from the company that you bought it from. So our right out of the gate approach was, we're going to customize it, we're going to own it. This is our database structure. And just so you know, the foundation of any good program is a good database design, and it's hard work. That's hard work. It's difficult. It's painful. You got to ask a lot of questions. You got to be very engaged with the business and understand what the end result is going to be. With that said, we want to own the data that we're storing. And when we use Ignition, the inductive automation software, it allows us to store the data in tables that we defined and we specified so that the queries were easy and all the joins and everything were just built right in from the ground up. So yes, we did do this straight from the scratch, but I got an IT staff that's dynamite, and these guys are very talented. So I am kind of blessed in that regard.
Are there any other questions out there? I have questions, but I'm not asking because I was waiting. Any others?
Sure, go ahead.
So basically, so really what the Ignition platform is doing for us, there's a lot of homegrown code, but there are some core components that the Ignition platform is giving us. It's giving us the PLC connectivity. So we didn't write our own PLC drivers. We didn't write our own OPC server. So it gave us that accessibility. It gave us easy access to Oracle databases, so we can design design our own data models, and it also gives us a lot of scripting and logging tools. So really, it's acted as the facilitator to allow us to basically be in one environment that feels like a .NET development environment. Pretty standard stuff if you're a software developer. But now right in the same spot, you have access to the database, you have access to your PLC values, you have access to alarm configuration. It's all in one spot. So really, the lines when you're developing in the software are really kind of blurred. So then for the reporting end, we can just write Ignition screens, or we can farm it out to our business intelligence systems. So while it is homegrown, there are some core foundation pieces that are coming out of Ignition.
I would like to add one other thing. As soon as the data is out of that PLC and stored in the database, I just made a major transition in the skill set required. I can now hand off to an IT guy, because now it's just database manipulation. I can go side to side, database to database, return and pass down information. I'm kind of moving the skill set required by that movement of information from the PLC into the database. I've extended, I can leverage my IT staff now in addition to engineering.
I think it's just really important to keep data in an open format, something that not just one application can look at, but potentially multiple people can look at, because there's different types of analytics out there. It's not just an HMI SCADA package. It can be something like an OLAP server that does online, analytics, processing data that can connect to different sources. And having it open, being able to connect to those sources is really important, I think.
Exxon. He was asking if Exxon's homegrown as well.
No, a number of the systems, the data visualization system was clearly a vendor system that was customized and installed by us. The subsequent apps were, they're built on vendor platforms with proprietary content, but there's vendor products under almost all of that stuff.
If I understand the statement correctly, you're really working on a relational database and not a historian. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I mean, once it's into the database, it's really not much different than some other tasks we've encountered. Before I started working for TED, I was actually in data warehousing. So I was doing very similar things for inventory and sales and marketing and things of that nature. And really, when I started talking with Ted about, what's this data look like and what would it look like in a SQL database, it's really not that much different. A lot of the techniques we use with bitmap indexes and partitioning and the dimensional data models, it's really not that different. There's a couple little variations we'll hit because we want to trend it, so we're not doing purely aggregates, which usually in a BI tool you're going to be doing. But really, at the core, the skill set, once it's collected, beyond knowing your process, is really data warehousing and big relational data skills.
I just want to toss in that most of our analytics, the ones that are more complex than 4-function calculator, once we get much beyond that, a relational database is the way to go, because we find you're running cases and models, and it's not just time series data.
And just with relational databases, the good thing about it is you can really define a nice structure of the data. And by defining a nice structure, you can have these lookups and ways of actually cubing that data out so that you can actually perform different dimensions of analytics on that data. So like Dan and Ted were showing, how you could look at it by line, or you could look at it by plant, or you can compare. You can start comparing data in different ways because there's a structure defined. It's not just one flat data structure.
When you're looking at the analyticals, are you guys storing your data on a second or sub-second basis? Or are you guys storing typical data in minutes or 5-minute or hour intervals? The panel.
We're in the seconds realm. So we're not in the microsecond realm. I could understand why there are some processes you need to get down to that level. I don't doubt that our software could. We just, we're batching and filling in packaging. That's our business. So we don't need it. We're in the seconds realm, and we found in some cases reading every 3 seconds was more than fast enough in a lot of cases to give us a full picture of what's happening in the factory right now.
And then do you summarize? Because you mentioned about summarizing as well.
Excuse me?
Do you summarize the data for historical data? Because you made a comment.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, what we noticed was we were concerned with over the long term, data was starting to slow down. So what we went to then was daily summarizations for historical data, and then we would read today would be just the live data.
And for trending things, usually we're not going to be trending months at a time of the raw data because you're going to lose so much resolution anyway. It's not going to add any value. So by doing partitioning on a short time period, but by location or by equipment, really, if we're looking at today or this week or yesterday, no matter how many sites or lines, for example, what we were showing there, really query speed should remain flat. You should really only be limited by the fact that your DBAs get mad at you because your database is getting too big for them to back up every night. So now you need some information lifecycle. But really, you should scale very cleanly if you choose your partitioning correctly. And the only time we're going to hit issues is if we're trying to look at 6 months of every site side by side. And that's where, even going to daily to look at 6 months, you're talking even if you're looking at a few 100,000 rows, that's going to run instantly in any modern commercial SQL database.
Any other questions? I think we've run out of time. So, okay. Well, appreciate if you help me thank the panel, and thank you very much. Very good.